people who have done psychedelic drugs of any sort, LSD, shrooms. What's the weirdest thing you've seen while tripping? U/Proceedings responded. I saw love. I was laying down in bed on around 4g of mushrooms, and among different things I felt really warm and safe. When I closed my eyes I saw a diamond-shaped object that radiated colors I have never seen before, but if I had to describe them, Elle would say it was bright and gleeful purple and pink. Edges were well defined and whole thing was beautiful. For a moment, around a minute, I felt nothing but being loved, safe and really warm. My body was blushing and floating. I did not hear any voices. I did not feel like there was any message or wise thoughts in the ether. It was pure bliss and love. I did mushrooms many times, but this encounter LVE always considered as a novelty, even after so many trips. U/Franklin_Kevin responded. Well, this might not seem too crazy from the outside, but here goes. I was sitting tripping out looking at shit move, and my friend opens a door from a part of the room I can't see and randomly throws some candy at me. And I catch it. I didn't know he opened the door, I didn't know he threw anything, and I didn't know I caught it. I only realized I had done the impossible when I looked down at my hand, then looked around. He was yelling, "Wait F." That was crazy. Some would say reflexes, or that it was just the drugs that made it crazy, but I felt as if I had gone in the future, saw him throw it and went back and caught it before I could have known it was thrown. U/Lambchopsocks responded. For myself was watching a girl I was doing it with transforming from her normal self into a clown. It was terrifying. I have no problems with clowns. We were standing in her living room having ice lollies and she looked up at me, and as she grinned, her face grew paint and her hair turned into a Joker's hat. LSD makes you see connections you don't want to see sober. Turned out she was a backer stabbed who wore a mask when I was around. Watching a good friend do LSD sober was profound. He fell in love with a wall. He tripped over a rug and was thankfully saved by the wall. The appreciation was beautiful. He hugged it for 20 minutes, telling it how much he loved it. He even cried. I have not seen love like that since. U/5 Hammer responded. On LSD was for whatever reason on this trip, reading a high school history textbook. I was really into it and came across a page showing George Washington on a boat, and instantly it became moving animation. Like I was watching a cartoon. I could hear conversations, smell the water. It was actually very cool. On mushrooms a bit tamer, but to me, a more intense and euphoric trip. Was laying on a beach with my GF at around midnight when the sky became a brilliant violet color and the moon became this perfect shade of silver. All the craters and lines on the moon were red and the moon began to beat, like a heart, and I could see blood pumping through the red veins. On peyote I was more way inside my own head, but one profound moment I remember was watching my own birth, like a ghost just hovering above my newborn self, and it was beautiful. On ayahuasca I don't remember shit from being on ayahuasca. Smiley face. U/SMW89 responded. While I haven't tried LSD or shrooms, in high school, before it was illegal to sell in smoke shops, my friends and I used to buy salvia. That shit is fucking crazy. It only lasts like 10 or 20 seconds, but you almost immediately start tripping when you smoke it. I was sitting on a bed and hit it from a bong. As soon as I blew it out, it felt like someone was pushing me down on the bed. I thought I was laying on a conveyor belt going through this scary-ass circus. Evil clowns were everywhere, sharp teeth and covered in blood. I'm not even scared of clowns. Edit. Others are saying the experience lasts longer than what I claimed. I did this shit like 10 plus years ago, so you guys are probably right. U/deleted responded. Shrooms. Not really something seen, I don't really see a whole lot. It's feelings and things I heard. When they really kick in, my whole body goes cold and I feel like I stepped into the Arctic tundra. I have felt music. A friend played some stuff I didn't like, typical music people listen to while tripping, and it was burning my face. My friend and I could feel each other's thoughts. That was a trip, lol. I also felt like I had supersonic hearing and laid on my bed listening to the conversations of all my neighbors in my apartment building. I could hear everything clear as if they were all right next to me. 10/10 would absolutely take shrooms again, have taken them about 6 times, and highly recommend them. U/deleted responded. For some unknown reason my brother and a friend of ours decided to eat mushrooms and go to Universal Studios in FLA. I start tripping real hard while in line for the Twister ride. Once we go into the dark room there is a movie intro that plays on a huge screen in front of everyone. I'm fucking out of this world tripping at this point, and I turn around and see all these fat tourists and their bratty kids just staring up at the screen. The lighting just intensified the zombie look on their faces. Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton, wind, tornado noises, OMG, it was so terrifying I passed out. But not before I told my bro I was going to, so he caught me. You/I've_lost_my_keys responded. I was on acid and watching a glass of ice water sitting on my nightstand. The ice just kept spinning around and around like it was some type of machine. Sober witnesses also saw this. Then out of nowhere the ice turned into a western diamondback rattlesnake, came out of the glass and struck out at my face, knocking me onto the floor and tipping the glass over, ending the snake attack. The sober people in the room did not see that part. Craziest, most realistic and detailed visual I think LVE ever seen. Then later that same trip I was playing billiards and I could see the dotted lines of where the ball would travel like in the old Nintendo pool game. I fucking wiped people up that night and made a bunch of money. I've never been good at pool before or since, but that night I could literally see all the angles. You/reptilian responded. I get very vivid hallucinations on psychedelics, and the first time this happened was on my 18th birthday after taking a pretty substantial dose of mushrooms. My brother and I are both waiting in the toilet line at a party. In the corner of my eye, I see this dude suddenly lurch forward into my peripheral vision and projectile vomit onto my leg. I hear him retch, feel the hot liquid hit my leg, and the smell of vomit stings my nostrils. I instinctively reach down to wipe the vomit off my leg and say to my brother, "Did you fucking see that shit? Gross." And he's like, "See what?" I look down at my hand. It's dry. Nothing on my leg. No smell of vomit. No one is standing where that dude was standing. Edit. Typos. You/Icus responded. My sister and I took shrooms when I was 15, she was 17. Our dad was out of town, so we invited our boyfriends over to hang out. Anyway, I'm not sure how long it took to start tripping, but I remember I was laying on the bed with my eyes closed and I see all these vibrant colors of flashing lights. It almost seemed like a disco, I guess. LOL. So I'm just chilling and a jolting sensation came over me. My sister was kicking the shit out of my back. She thought my hair looked like bugs. She was literally stomping me out, LOL. Later that night, we went to the deli not too far away and I don't remember what happened inside the store, but I left because I was getting paranoid. I was waiting outside and my sister came out like James Bond sliding 2 candy bars she stole out of her sleeves. Funniest thing I've ever seen. We were just walking the streets eating candy, trees spinning and the ground moved like waves. Other things happened that night too, so I'd say it was a pretty fun, harmless experience. I wouldn't recommend going outside a safe enclosed environment though, LOL. You/Brownladesh responded. Here's a bunch of cool visual experiences. A tree way back in my backyard became a queen praying mantis. Imagine if there were a Bug's Life type movie with mantises that were all decked out like Queen Victoria, strings of pearls and petticoats and crowns, etc. That's the best way to describe it. The much more fluffy and green tree next to her was just a bunch of shaggy dog heads. Another time I saw a tree where all the leaves were making a come here gesture, like a hand with an open upward palm, fingers curling in. It felt very welcoming and peaceful. First time I really tripped as was an EDM festival. Everyone had icy blue eyes like White Walkers and it looked like everyone's bottom jaw was vibrating separate from their face, like a demented glitchy crowd of ventriloquist dummies. The cartoon characters on the screen were doing the same thing, couldn't tell if it was the cause or the effect. Later that night the brick wall in my friend's living room was rotating and twisting in a way very similar to when Hagrid reveals Diagon Alley to Harry for the first time. You/Thisis not my first TME responded. Not necessarily a psychedelic I guess, but when I first started smoking weed I thought I was all big and bad and could hang with the big dogs. There was this crazy-ass Navy dude who invited me over to check out his homemade gravity bong. 5-gallon bucket and 2-liter Coke bottle. I hit that like it was nothing. Kind of. Not really. I went to the sink because I thought I would puke. He asked another friend to get some leftover spaghetti out of the fridge and heat it up for me because I needed something to eat. I must have looked really bad for this dude to give one fuck. I was sitting on the floor at the coffee table and somebody gave me a plate of comfort food and I was scared to death. Because if I took any bite of this stuff I would be stuck in another dimension and have to live with the Brady Bunch forever, and this was a serious decision. I had not thought about the stupid Brady Bunch in years and there was no reason to have thought about those wholesome fools. I was terrified of the interdimensional time travel spaghetti on the checker patterned plate. You/Numbers Games responded. LSD, but maybe actually a research chemical. I went to a dark bathroom to take a piss and saw cats absolutely everywhere. They didn't make sound, I couldn't touch or feel them, they were only in my peripheral, and I was fully aware that they were hallucinatory and not real, but they were still cats everywhere. It was probably influenced by my friend having a cat in their room and petting it before going to the bathroom, And that wasn't even close to the weirdest thing I saw, but for some reason it stayed distinct in my mind. Another thing I saw that was cool was a weird bubble pattern on a Febreze can that, when sober, was just a boring all pattern. However, when the LSD hit me, the bubbles were moving and popping on the can like a 2D moving image. Last one, and the one that would probably qualify as the weirdest, was when I was peeking and I could see the fourth dimension, or what I thought was the fourth dimension. I could see small, random, transparent geometric tubes and impossible shapes like the Mobius strip or Klein bottle or all sorts of other undefined impossible shapes, but they were long chains of them strung together that looked like a hidden dimension that I could see if I looked at just the right angle. These shapes were everywhere, in the air, on the walls, in the walls, everywhere, and to me they looked like pockets of time where in certain areas of these shapes time moved faster or slower. Obviously only made sense to me at the time, and to me it was incredible because it felt like I had unlocked a secret dimension of the universe that only I could see. U/Deadly Samurai 1996 responded. Was never into it but had a childhood friend who got into drugs and he was much into DXM, robo-tripping, told me unbelievable stories and I was like, he is crazy. He told me my ignorance will turn to a bliss and I was, yeah, let's see. So we rented out a place with few of my uni friends, made it into a LAN party, League of Legends, trip type of thing, might well as enjoy to fullest, so I had a full bottle whereas he told me half would be enough. He said it takes an hour to kick in, it's been 2 hours and I was like nothing happening and was like, yeah, this is BS. The minute I said that I started hallucinating like no tomorrow and I had a really weird trip where I was sitting in a couch, day got over, went home, finished uni, got a job, got married, had kids, become old, and I died, and the minute that happened I literally felt I woke up and snapped back to the couch where I was tripping. It felt like 40 plus years but actually it was like 10 to 15 minutes. I fucking freaked out and I was like, holy shit. At that point I understood what he meant, my ignorance will be a bliss. U/MTC responded. As a teen I did cough and cold pills sometimes. I have a distinct memory of stumbling on my friend's porch and her dogs ran up and confided to me the secrets of the maggot dance. It involved gallons of mayo, a big stage, a bodysuit and a shower cap. And there was a whole song. All conveyed in about a few seconds by dogs in complete and clear English. I still remember the damn song. Another time her cat started talking to me in French. I don't speak French, but it sure as hell sounded like French and I understood every word. The worst part was when I picked up a troll doll she had and that motherfucker winked at me. I threw him into the wall as hard as I could. I still remember the terror of realizing that troll doll was alive and aware. And I responded by killing the fuck out of it as quick as I could. U/deleted responded. A few notable experiences. You could say I've dabbled, lol. 2 CR pink and blue dots and highlights streaming smoothly but like static across my vision. I really liked this experience. But, here's a couple bad ones. Acid of December 2015, unexpectedly took acid with my girlfriend at the time, and then a blizzard blew in and her basement apartment didn't have heat. We listened to sludge metal and fucked, where I seemed to have the idea my penis was a unicorn horn, and that I was piercing her to death. I didn't snap out of that till after I came. And once we stopped we realized it was like 20 degrees and we sat but naked in front of a space heater chain smoking and staring into the galaxy, smoke plus space heater sun. Worst, acid plus meth trip of mid-12. I had already been up for 4 days at this point, and a good friend offered a few potent hits of acid in a trade. I took it and things shot off all wild. Everything seemed so dark. Everything had that creepy sort of retro feel Pee-wee's Funhouse has. Wacky in an unnerving way. Shadow people coming out of the shadows. As we were driving, she was sober, I was in the backseat hoping to pass out. I caught a glance in the rear view of myself, and my teeth just like stood out to me. So Elle smiled. And that's when they all fell backwards into my throat. Not really, but acid, eh? And continued to grow back and fall back out to choke me over and over from the 30-minute drive. Disconcerting to say the least. When we got to our destination I took a couple Xanax and a hot shower and passed out ASAP. U/throwaway 47467887 responded. Deliberately bad tripped on mushrooms after my mum's suicide, looking to confront all my feelings about it. Very, very occasional user. Felt, not heard or saw, but felt, the specter of her mental illness in the room with me, taunting me that I was next. It told me it would never stop following me around, I told it I would never stop fighting it. The sense of it in the room with me the entire sleepless night. Cried and cried. Wailed. Called out to my mum. Struggled to stand up. Felt like the night would never end. Laid in the floor processing it and came to the conclusion that all my mum would have wanted was to start her life again from my age, and that all I could do for her now was to live the sort of life that I wouldn't feel warranted reliving. It sped up the grieving process by weeks or months, but it wasn't for wimps. It was the opposite of drinking your feelings away. Confronting rather than avoiding. Wouldn't feel right recommending it. It was actually like being in hell, or being mad, but I came out the other side stronger and wiser. Rather not answer any questions, but thanks for reading. U/Vidyagami player responded. The very first time I took shrooms, best trip ever. I started out in a meadow and was looking at a hill in the distance. Eventually I started feeling like I was actually on that hill a mile away until I looked down at the ground and felt like I was sucked back to where I was at light speed. Holy fuck, that's when I knew it was starting. After a little bit, I was riding in the car back to the apartment with roommate and my GF. Holy fuck, the colors. Everything was shooting rainbows and I saw colors that don't exist. Back at home, I remember the room breathing, books were moving in and out of the shelves, pictures on the wall became three-dimensional and holographic. I decided to eat a Klondike bar, which was amazing but difficult to eat because it was melting and changing shape at the same time. I yelled at the ice cream to stop changing shapes, lol. Then our roommate took out some glow sticks, cut them open, and flung the droplets on everything and turned out the lights. I explored the fucking galaxy. I laughed, I cried, and I felt emotions that I could not identify. 10/10 would try this again, U/Pamz70 responded. I was maybe 15 at the time and my friend and I took acid. We went to her boyfriend's, he is Vietnamese, apartment, which was in a bad neighborhood. So a bunch of his friends were there, sitting at the kitchen table eating and drinking. She goes off into the bedroom with him and leaves me alone with all these guys I don't know, and I'm the only girl. So I'm sitting on the floor starting to trip. Well, apparently they had some chicken feet and were starting to fuck with me, pretending to scratch me, chasing after me and laughing, and I was full on starting to flip the fuck out, so I just left and started walking. It's probably 2 a.m. by now, and I'm far from home. I see a bus stop, so I go sit down, and across the street is an old gas station. The front was window save for maybe a foot at the bottom. And then I see what I can only describe as a gremlin-rabbit hybrid. More gremlin but with long tall ears, and it's staring dead at me, hopping all the way one side then back. Now I'm really fucking tripping. Across the street, same side is a phone booth, 1980s, so called my dad, collect to come get me. I was crying hysterically, all the while I can still see this thing. Dad comes, I get in and go home. Mom had already started a fire, so I grabbed my blanket, covered my head and sat there staring into the fire. My parents never said one fucking word about it. Sorry for the long story. This happened over 30 years ago and the whole thing is still so vivid. Also, fuck you Tracy, you filthy whore. You don't leave your acid buddy by themselves. U/Barmanfred responded. I never saw anything that wasn't there, just distortions and the usual geometric patterns. Having said that, 2 stories. First time I did acid, I was in a small town in Texas on N.Ys Eve. We were watching a series of stand-up comics on HBO, I think. I heard a guy come in the door, but I didn't look up for a minute. When I did, there was a resplendently dressed black man standing there. This was the 70s and he was wearing a 3-piece suit with a matching overcoat over his shoulders. It was a tan color, classy and expensive. I just stared. Too small a town for this kind of thing. He smiled at my open-mouthed expression and said, "Are you fucked up?" I said yes. He smiled again and said, "Go ahead and look, I'm real." I asked a friend about it later and he laughed and mentioned the guy by name. He'd been real all right. Once on shrooms, I watched most of Facts of Life go to Paris. It was as bad as you'd think it was, but I didn't think to change the channel. U/deleted responded. LSD, my friend took me to this place, so it wasn't like oh shit did you see that, but hidden in upstate NY there is a property off of many secluded dirt roads where an acid playground of sorts was built. Things like statues coming out of the water, a spiral staircase that lead nowhere just in the middle of a clearing. A maze. A very well-built treehouse with stained glass windows. A tea house built over the edge of a waterfall. There were plaques with descriptions of fairies that lived in the area and many colored flags. Even down the little details there were things like little archways with musical gongs you could bang on or little statues made of stone or tree trunks. And there wasn't a soul in sight. I honestly considered never doing acid again because of how incredible the experience was, and I knew it could never be topped. Definitely my peak experience on drugs for sure. I can post pictures if anyone is interested. U/Torokins responded. The first time I did acid was last November. 3 tabs because I make horrible decisions. It took forever to hit, but when it did it hit hard. 1 minute everything was normal and then I blinked and the colors were too bright even though we were in a dark room. My roommates had me walk outside and I cried because the trees were finally their true selves. I put my feet in a swimming pool even though it was 50 degrees outside, and when I tried to pull them back up it was like jello. When music was played for me everything was too slow and I couldn't hear out of one ear. That stressed me out. Then I wandered into my bedroom alone and danced in my mirror for 2 minutes, but it felt like 2 days. Then I dragged my sober roommates into my room and shut my door and whispered about how this is my shell. I'm like a snail because my arms can wiggle, see? This room is my shell and my car is my mobile shell. There's videos of me saying this shit. I'd love to do it again, but the come down was almost painful for me because my body gets achy and I can't eat for a few days afterwards. Make sure you have one sober person around you if anyone wants to try it. You/Elizabeth responded. My boyfriend was trip-sitting me one of the first times I did acid, and he put on a video of Red Panda. It was playing around in a zoo enclosure and you could hear a group of children who must have been watching off-screen oohing and ahhing in the background. The crescendo of their voices created a vast black space in the middle of the image which morphed into the red panda's eyes going black and it howling. Which at the time was like the funniest thing I'd ever seen, and I clung to my boyfriend's shoulder pointing at the screen and wheezing. Also, I guess LD never noticed that if you tap on my phone's lock screen little bubbles will appear in the same color as the area of the background where you tap it. I tapped my phone for like an hour just staring at the bubbles trying to work out if that was real or not. You/Flapperjack responded. Honestly, when I was in my wild youth, I tried a ton. Here are some of the most memorable. Mescaline and ecstasy at an underground club in Lane. The lights and music made love to me lol. I thought I could actually feel them. I danced my ass off while my ex held onto my shoes, purse, and shirt. So much fun. Same mix, different night watching the bioluminescence, red tide, listening to music while dancing on the beach. Literally felt like and looked like heaven. Amazing. Acid good trip, walked around the beach city I lived in with my best friend admiring nature. Everything was beautiful x10. Bad trip, my fingers shrunk and got fat. I thought they turned into Vienna sausages while everyone at the party continued to look more and more evil. It would be so fun to go back in time to relive some of those experiences. You/Sflagic Ninja responded. Long story short, I accidentally took 15 hits of acid and tripped for 3 days. Usually LSD has no psychotic hallucinations. It is a wonderful drug that I believe has very profound ways of getting humans to feel more connected with each other and the universe as a whole. That said, I was watching 2D surfaces turn 3D. Concrete with paint spots because a universe where the smaller dots were stars that were further away than the large spots. I saw images spiraling out of a television set. The entire world was a series of geometric shapes and were interlocked together. Colors in paintings would run into each other like water. I saw myself a number of times as though I was outside of myself. Everything had a light trail. Everything. The entire world was bright and slightly smeared. I could see the most minute detail in everything. The entire world was a crystalline structure. I'll detail more as I remember it. You/MVB 1837 responded. I was tripping my face off on mushrooms. For some reason these were way more potent than the other times LD tried them. I went to the bathroom as a safe space, but forgot my mother re-wallpapered it with these awful brown patterns. The walls were bothering me, so I stared at my left leg, and then my leg hair opened into an endless mandala of truth, and a booming voice said, "You may ask one question." I thought, holy shit, this is that religious moment that I thought was just in movies. I steal from Douglas Adams and ask, what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? The voice, without hesitation, bellows wall of penises and then snapped shut. I was a bit bewildered by that response. You/Decadent Beaver responded. Magic mushrooms. A. I was tripping at a friend's house years ago and my bro turned up. I was convinced he was Cat in the Hat and proceeded to compliment him on his whiskers. B. Few weeks later at same friend's house, and I decided to go see my bro who was at another mate's house. I have no memory of that journey and don't know how I made it. They were smoking weed, so we're on a different high. I sat down to watch a film with them, when my legs got up and walked out the door. I naturally panicked, and tried to explain to them what had just happened. They told me I should just wait and they'd come back. Only problem was that the doorway to his front room had vanished and we were surrounded by 4 solid walls. Next thing I know, the Grim Reaper is stood in front of me pointing a finger at me laughing, then said, "You're fucked, mate." Last time I did mushrooms, You/Allura responded. Have done both shrooms and LSD, loved both. With the shrooms I chopped them up, put them in a tea bag and brewed them with some Earl Grey out of my espresso maker. It made it really potent and you didn't get sick to your stomach that way. My husband ate some instead and was on the couch nauseous all night. Probably favorite thing I saw was on LSD. I went on a walk and ended up in my backyard having a fight with a tree because it was giving me a dirty look. Way more intense visuals with LSD. Another time my brother was sitting in the corner with a light over his head. He kept morphing into stuff like an alien and other weird shit. You can imagine the look on my face. So I start freaking him out completely just because of the way I was looking at him. I still remember the time he was shrooming and I walked in on him in the bathroom sitting on the floor, laughing. But my favorite time was on shrooms. It wasn't because I saw anything. I was playing COD online, forget which, and I was laughing non-stop running all over the map just absolutely wiping the floor with everyone. I got like 30-2 or something. It was my best match ever and I was laughing like a bastard the whole time. U/Calcutta Dianekama responded. LSD. This gave me a feeling that I'm either not alone in the universe, I have some kind of protector, or perhaps the human mind is more powerful than we allow it to be. In the woods with friends, in the distance I see walls of light. Translucent, but rainbow-colored walls. I need to get closer, try to figure out what these walls are all about. This area was perfect for tripping. Big pieces of the nearby mountain had fallen off due to erosion, so the woods were covered in these big, climbable mini mountains. I climb on one of these rocks to get to the first wall. As I approach, I realize the wall is blocking. I could pass through if I want, a crack in one of these boulders that would have resulted in a very nasty fall, maybe even being trapped. Weird. I go to the next wall, another trap. It was a bit of a hidden ledge that would have once again resulted in a nasty fall if I went through. Every wall of light I came across, if I passed through it would have resulted in bodily harm or death. And it was bizarre to me because I'd see these protective walls long before I would see what the wall was trying to warn me of. I really haven't been able to explain that. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Leave your own stories down below, I would love to read them. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, it helps me out greatly.